30 years ago, two men, Sweet and Bernard Hawken, were brutally attacked in Central Park in Plymouth. It was a horrific, gruesome assault which changed the city and left a lasting imprint on all of those involved. Stuart Newbury, pictured here appealing for information after the attack in 1995, was the detective tasked with leading the investigation.
I was called out that night early in the morning to effectively pick up the case. What I remember gradually as we learnt more about the case, so the shocking horror of it really started to emerge. It was a homophobic attack, we know that. We'd heard about attacks, but not to the gravity that we experienced in this case. They received a horrific beating, kicking, jumped off the bench on top of certainly Sweet, and he died as a result of his injuries, which were multiple injuries to the head and to the body. Bernard Hawken managed to escape, and he ran up towards Pound's house, further up in Central Park. But they caught up with him and they continued to give him a kicking, and he was seriously injured and found, and sadly he ended up with a life of disability in a wheelchair with the injuries that he sustained from that night.
Stuart says the police were forced to change their approach to the LGBT community in order to properly investigate the attack.
Here was a community for all sorts of reasons would operate quietly, secretly, didn't want their behaviour to be known necessarily by their families or to friends, and so homophobic attacks often went unreported. Who knows, had there been a real good grasp of these sort of events and attacks, this sort of case might never have happened.
In the weeks following the attack, vile homophobic graffiti was scrawled around the scene, leaving other gay men in the city, like Alan and David, fearing for their own safety.
At that stage in my life, I was desperately trying to stay in the closet. So suddenly, what felt like a city that had never really talked about gay life, LGBT life, suddenly there was this awful story in the paper and people were talking about that. And I just remember being really, really scared, actually, and sort of thinking to myself, is this what's going to happen to me?
The police set up a confidential hotline to gather evidence but also to offer counselling, an attempt to strengthen the difficult relationship between the force and the LGBT community.
Suddenly the police were reaching out on the radio, on television and in the newspapers and saying, we need help here, and if people are willing to come forward, we'll make sure that you're looked after. So I volunteered to go and take calls from anybody that wanted to give any evidence of anything that they knew about the whole situation.
The three attackers, Stuart Smith, Richard Bones and Roberto Pace, were arrested and later convicted of murder and jailed for life. Alan and David say huge progress has been made over the past 30 years, but they fear the current debate around trans rights and gender identification has worrying parallels with 1995.
We've reached a point where people feel it's okay to sort of meet someone and go, I don't agree with your identity. I don't think your identity is valid. So it's a different kind of prejudice now. Do you know what I mean? Whereas in the old days, people would shout something in the street or throw a brick through a window. Now they post something online, or they'll just say something. And when you question it or challenge it, they'll tell you it's freedom of speech and who are you to go. But actually the conversations have become different, and I think quite unsettling.
Elle runs a bookshop on the outskirts of Plymouth city centre. It's a warm, welcoming place, but they say prejudice, abuse and even physical violence towards queer, non-binary and transgender people is threatening to spoil the celebratory mood.
It's something that I've been hearing more and more often. People still aren't quite comfortable reporting it because they're not quite sure if they're going to be taken seriously. I wear my pronoun pins at work, but on the way in and out, I will take them off. Going back a few years ago on my way to uni, I would wear one in. I got spat out on the bus. People get upset about labels, and, people don't have to label themselves, that's fine, but for other people, that's a really useful thing, because you get to find something that describes you, and you get to find other people that also identify with that. You create your own family, essentially, of people who understand you. They're all going to be different, but you'll have this one thing in common. And it's so powerful.
Elle says the debate around transgender rights and gender identification, and the recent Supreme Court ruling which stated that the terms man and woman should refer to biological sex, have made life much more uncertain.
There's a lot of fear around it, a lot of confusion about what's going to happen. Naturally, a lot of anger. There's no way to explain to a young trans person that it's not their fault people hate them. They have done nothing wrong.
Figures show that across Devon and Cornwall, there was a total 19% increase in hate crimes last year, with hate crimes linked to transgender identification rising by more than 38%. This trend is something I put to Chief Superintendent Matt Longman, Commander of the Police in Plymouth.
Those crime rates are indicators for us, but they're not the whole story. So what's really important to me is that we continue to build those relationships with people who either directly or on behalf of others can help me understand where those tensions are and what we need to do to carry on looking after people.
We've spoken to some members of the LGBT community who say they're still not comfortable reporting hate crime to the police. They're still experiencing abuse. Is that worrying to you?
Oh, without doubt, there's always work to be done. Building that trust and confidence is what takes so long. Things have changed massively in 30 years. Process of change is much easier to report directly to us or through third party. We have specialist resources who can deal with victims of crime. We have people who help us engage with various sections of the community. But the trust and confidence takes so much time, and only one negative story and one experience can set us back so easily that's why that needs just constant energy and focus to just keep connected with the communities we need to.
Luke Pollard, Plymouth's first openly gay MP, says the best way to tackle prejudice and hate is to call it out.
I want to see, when that abuse happens, for it to be reported, because we know so much of this abuse happens out of the spotlight, out of the media glare, and isn't reported to the authorities. You don't have to go to the police to report a hate crime. You can report online, you can report to third-party reporting centres, the councils, but we've got a lot more work to do until everyone can feel safe and comfortable in their own skin being who they authentically are.